You are either watching or listening to The Climb. I am John Sarakis, and this is brought to you by the Digital Mastermind. Today, we had the opportunity to interview Guy Powell. Guy Powell is an expert in measuring, right? So measuring to a lot of our listeners can be anything from your clothes or to whatever. But granted, today we're specifically speaking to the effectiveness of marketing. But before we get into all that, Dave, why don't you come out here?
Hey.
So when I think of measurement as it comes to ROI, and I don't even know why I said clothes. I think that's probably because it's time to go clothing shopping or something. I always think of that quote. The guy, I think it was like Wanamaker or something. He said, 50% of my 50% of my advertising is wasted. My advertising ad dollars are wasted. I just don't know what 50% it is, right? Wow. But now when we're in the age that we are and everybody thinks everything can be measured, we get that into a little bit of the show. I'm of the ilk that almost everything can be measured to a certain point, right? I guess what's that?
It can. It's tough. It takes dedication to identify how to measure things.
And you have to put the systems in place. You also have to have the want, because I think too many people are that hero in the beginning where they just start something and they have no idea what the end looks like. They got a fuzzy picture and they don't measure it. Where do you, from a standpoint of measurement, how important is that when you start something, or do you just dive right into?
Personally, I just dive right into things. But in business, we don't even measure that much. We measure financials really, really well, but I mean, we don't do a whole lot of marketing or advertising. We're very much, press the flesh for our sales and our marketing, and so I don't know. But I will tell you from a personal experience, I've gotten into gardening, right? And so I had to buy these raised garden beds, and I wish I would have asked a Guy about this, because I actually went back after I ordered a bunch of the stuff. I found it from a YouTuber, and he had an affiliate program, and part of some of that measuring is because they say, hey, use this code or use this affiliate link and they'll get credit for it. So I bought all this stuff and I went, oh shit, I just bought that without using that link. I just remembered it a couple days later. And so after the stuff showed up, I was like, oh man, I really wish this guy would get credit for it. So I emailed the company and said, hey, by the way, this guy was responsible for all these sales, and hopefully they did the right thing and applied it to them. But how would you measure that? So that's where I think some of the fuzzy breakdown comes is how does that get in the ROI?
Yeah. And that's where, and at what point does measuring become a hindrance? And granted, the scales of the budgets that he's working with are pretty gnarly, right? And we're talking about kind of some of our littler things. We do measurements for our clients, but yeah, our sales and our marketing, we do a fair amount of measurement, but it's very like surface level. Mm-hmm. I don't even think at the data sets that we have, like going in, too in depth, I think it can distort things. But at the same time, we've never hired a guy like Guy. So right. That's like that data scientist that's really going to dig in, going to build the models and going to show you like, hey, this is how it's supposed to go. And this is when it's too much.
We do have some pretty good measuring for jobs in sports. We
also sponsor the show.
Yeah. They do advertising. We do Google and Facebook advertising. We do convert that into a cost of conversion. We do know how many people convert, usually turn into paid customers. I mean, there is a formula there, and it's not incredible. It could be better.
So 2005, I think, is the year when Google came out. I can't remember, but a lot of what I did in digital marketing was around growing up with Google, right? Yep. Just seeing them take over more market share in search, following their best practices. It was just an amazing tool. And I used to tout it like, oh, there's no better search engine. Do you remember everybody had their like search engine of choice? And
Ask Jeeves.
Ask Jeeves, Lycos, AOL, so on and so forth. And I remember you would be able to see like all the keywords that somebody visited a site for in Google Webmaster Tools. Now it's called Google Search Console. And that was awesome, right? We could literally figure out like this is what people are and just, create like behavior models and buyer intent, getting into like really juicy like SEO stuff. And then those fuckers took it away. And like they claimed that it was all for to protect privacy, and none of that even really makes sense to some extent in the grand schemes. They get to see all that data, but people couldn't see it on their end, which was helping their businesses form. I think I lost a lot of faith in digital technology at that point, because it was at the behest. It was like, oh man, that's not cool. And that's also going on right now, where to some extent it's true, data privacy protection, there are nefarious people out there, but that's what all the hardware and a lot of the software companies are beginning to do. Granted, the fight between Apple and Facebook, but it's happening all over again.
I think it's more nefarious than that. I think that they wanted to start manipulating the algorithms for their own purposes, and they couldn't have John Siracuses pointing out their hypocrisy. So they had to hide that bit, and then they could sell. They could sell more access. I mean, that's what they did. It's like I would like to go back to like the 80s and find out what was so bad about the pay for play controversy with radio stations, because I remember as a kid that was like a big deal. I feel like our world is pay for play. So what was so bad then?
It's just what happens at the time. Somebody's making a business decision, whether it's the business is the small fish and the environment is the shark, or vice versa. And I think it's all about the timing. Google could just do it because they were this growing product. They, don't be evil was their slogan at the time, and they pitched it. And granted, I don't want to take this away. Like, Guy Powell is awesome. I believe in measuring as much as you can, but I think there's these things that were at the behest, and then trying to figure those out, especially when you're a smaller agency, is a complete nightmare. And
we did touch on this in the interview. AI, like when you get to this level of calculation, and it's, I guarantee you within the next 5 years, Google already has some AI built into it,
for sure.
Within 5 years, they're just going to say, give us $10,000 and we'll make sure you get $11,000 with the business. And people are like, all right.
Right. Yeah. Even now with their one product, and we have people on our team that are well more versed than me. It's Google local listings and whatnot. If you've searched for an attorney, an HVAC company, or so on and so forth, you literally say, all right, here's my budget, like $3,400 a week. This is how many leads you should get from that. So they're already doing that to some extent.
I know. But right now, there's still the human element of being able to craft a message that is more effective. Like, there is still the ability, what do we call it, a meritocracy? Like, you still have to be better than other people.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, that's going to go away, though. It's not about your creativity, your message, your positioning. It's going to simply be the AI just, is going to deliver you this much based on how much money you have. You want to increase your business?
Guy Powell has anything to do with it.
Well, so he's on the elite level. He's on the elite level, knowing how to produce those campaigns that are going to position you ahead of your competitors.
Yeah. And it's also just deploying the money, right? That's the thing. At the end of the day, it's not just this giant purse that owners and shareholders get to take home. It's, okay, how can we add more lifeblood into this business so we can beat out the competition, add some money to R&D, and just keep going and going and going?
Yeah, it's creating the system. And the small HVAC is going to have a hard time creating a system that is as complex as what Guy discusses in the interview. But an HVAC, what would you call it? Like a
conglomerate.
Conglomerate. They could, and that's why they're going to beat the small guy. Which I don't know. I don't know.
Not always, because the small guy can do guerrilla stuff. They can get in all the little local Facebook groups. There's certain things that.
Good. You just walked me back from the edge, because I was just about to say I don't want to live in that world where the big guy always wins.
I love when I meet a small business owner, and whether it's the barber down the street, and I ask, like, all right, so how did you build your client base? New shop opens up, year and a half they've been there. And they just say, oh, I went to, different bars. I like beers. And I would just talk to people about their haircuts, and then I would give them a card. It's like, that's how you built your book of business? It's like, yeah. It's like, I love that. Yeah, it's you're just literally doing the fundamentals, just making sure that you're having a conversation, whether that's written word or verbal, with the target audience, right? The person can see, hey, this is a guy, I cut Guy's hair, and having that conversation. Then you can just continually build on that business.
You know, I can't believe I've never thought about talking about this on this show. One of my best examples of marketing and ROI or SEO is my fan club. And many people that listen, the 3 people that listen to the show, know that I am the president of the Patriots fan club here in Jacksonville. Now, back when Jacksonville played New England for the AFC Championship game, lots of Boston media outlets reached out to me for an interview. And a lot of Jacksonville media reached out and published articles about the Patriot fan club in Jacksonville. If you Google, so the reason why I thought of this is 2 new people came to the fan club this week. I said, whoa, how'd you find us? Did you get the email? They're like, no, we're just traveling through. And we wanted to watch the game. And I was like, so how'd you find us? They're like, we just Googled Jacksonville Patriots bar. And we are by far I think it's the first 5 or 6 links are all about our fan club.
SEO.
And when we get those people that say, yeah, we just Googled Patriots bar in Jacksonville and you guys showed up, I was like, damn, that feels good. So think about that for business. If you can achieve that for a business, that must feel really good.
Yeah, that's SEO. Like that's where I was talking about starting in 2005 and doing those types of things. And also, it's the same thing that we do for our clients. When you own those positions, and we've seen back in the link buying days where Google would take your business off. Right? They're like, all right, you're no longer going to rank for those terms, you cheater. We're going to go ahead and put you into purgatory or whatever sandbox. And you would just see businesses, multi-million-dollar businesses, doing $10, $12 million a year, just boom, gone overnight. It's as if their business was in a busy location in like downtown Manhattan. They closed off all the roads to get there. No more drive-by traffic. Yep, you're done.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a powerful position to be in.
Powerful.
But more the reason to have guys like Guy Powell where they're doing all of those measurements and telling you like, all right, hey, this is where all of your business is coming from. This is the effectiveness of where it's at, building all those models and keeping you to date. So I think without any further ado, we go ahead and introduce our episode. This is The Climb. Before we get to it, when this is over or any time in between, feel free to reach out to us. You can send me an email, jon@digitalmastermind.com. Like us on wherever you're listening to this. Share this with somebody else because this is the show for agency owners, technologists, and marketers. But now, without any further ado, this is our episode with Guy Powell. Thank you so much. Guy, thank you so much for joining us.
Good to see you, Jon. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, our pleasure. So I would like to begin with your climb. How did you get here?
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, I've been doing this now for quite a while, but I guess the biggest thing that really did it is I was the VP of marketing with a company. We were selling, to consumers and to businesses as well. And I wanted to increase my marketing budget. And so I went to the CEO. I was the CMO basically, and I said, "Hey, I've got a plan here to spend a couple million more on my marketing budget." And he said, "Well, Guy, that'd be great, but why would I ever invest in marketing? I don't know if it works. I'd rather hire sales guys." And that really was the impetus to start me to, first of all, determine how successful marketing was. So, it was also the impetus for my first book and really then all of my books. And it also helped me to really start to figure out ways to measure marketing. How much sales did it actually deliver? How to connect all my marketing to sales. And then ever since then, I wrote a book, my first book called Return on Marketing Investment, and then wrote a couple of other ones. When I wrote my first book, I hate to say it, how long ago it was, but it was kind of the late early stages of the internet. And as soon as it got out there, I was getting calls and emails and whatever to come and speak do some training on marketing and measuring marketing and how to calculate marketing ROI. And one of the things that I've found is that when you teach and when you try and present a concept, you actually learn it a lot more. But then from there, a lot of those people actually became consulting clients and analytics clients, and did consulting and analytics around the world. A lot of Southeast Asia, China, and then now more recently here. I'm on my fifth book now with post-COVID, almost in our grasp. I'm working on a book to really look at how we can, understand how to build a marketing machine, which is then predictable and reliable and accountable, so that marketers can, continuously connect their marketing to sales and continuously generate more revenue and keep their bosses happy, the C-suite happy, certainly the stockholders happy, and then hopefully they can, maintain and grow their careers.
Right on. That's a solid climb. So you were taking the guesswork out of marketing, like right before the internet, and then you wrote a book. Like, what does that look like? Because that's super interesting to me, because so much changed, of course, with the internet.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I want to get into too much detail because it really ages me, but it was the internet, both at home and and in the office, was really, it had kind of gotten past that first stage, and so people were really starting to use it for a whole lot of different things, and then the idea of being able to at the same time say, wow, I did all this marketing, I did some online, wow, I can look at the number of clicks I got, and how many visits I got. And then that kind of led itself to being able to figure out how to measure. Now, some of the bigger brands at that time had already started that. They were using statistics and other processes. Right now, the methodology is called marketing mix modeling, just as a name. But it's basically a method to say, hey, I did an ad on TV on Friday, and wow, look at that, sales went up. I wonder if they're correlated. I wonder if they, are connected. And that turned into a science. And that was going on in parallel, with my journey. I didn't know about it until I really got into it. I would, in my business, we were, a mid-sized business, and, and marketing analytics wasn't even a term. And so I started, just really trying to understand how to connect sales. And really at the time, I guess, now it's called last touch attribution. We're probably, a lot of us are familiar with that. That's really what I was looking at. And then as I got into it more, then I realized, well, wait a minute now, TV, I advertised on Friday and sales went up on Saturday. There must be a connection. And so then that's when, I started to really understand how statistics could help us as well.
With your former boss that just had the sales, that just wanted to hire salespeople, what were you guys selling at the time?
We were selling internet firewalls.
Okay.
So you would we were doing a home. There was a home one that we just came out with, and then there was obviously the business ones. The big kind of the heavy iron ones for larger companies that needed to protect their whole their whole business.
Got it. All right. So tell me about your book. You just came out with a new one.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It's called Post-COVID Marketing Machine, and how you can be successful by certainly by measuring and analyzing your marketing. We just did the pre-launch. We became #1 bestseller on Amazon in a couple of categories. Really happy about that. We're getting close to being done with writing it, and the idea is that marketers need to be able to be predictable in what they do. So if I'm going to spend $1 million, I want to know that it's going to generate, X millions of dollars in sales, and hopefully, more than $1 million in profit. And #1. But #2, I want to be able to do it in a regular, repeatable, and accountable way. It's not just doing it once. I want to make sure that every dollar I put out there can be connected to sales. And then, but also, the world changed. I mean, COVID came along, and, man, what a difference. And, a lot of marketers certainly changed the way they were selling their products. they changed their products, as a matter of fact, too. A lot of them, started to figure out how, one of our clients is a museum, and they started to figure out how to sell virtual tours. And so now that's a whole new product. They were closed. They couldn't even open. So they had to have a digital product. They changed the way they marketed. They were marketing now all online once they got to reopen. And then the marketers had to figure out, well, wait a minute now, wow, and now I need to figure out again how to, start to measure that marketing. And so the goal of the book is to take a lot of the concepts that were in my current book, Marketing Machine, and then now apply them kind of to the new environment, which is more digital, more fast moving, and products changed and what have you, but do it now in the post-COVID environment.
So it's got like an innovative spin on it, right? So if you're rapidly doing something, is that a part of it?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. That and the concept of continuous improvement has got to be in there. Marketers have to learn from what they just did to be able to say, wow, that that thing I just did on connected TV, it looks like it really, really worked. But when I combined it, it was even better when I combined it with some good retargeting. And so being able to learn that and immediately turning that around into something that can generate even more and more sales, faster and faster. So that's kind of the idea.
With clients, there's especially like SEO and some of these other things, there's like an unknown, right? Like, what's a good margin of unknown?
Yeah, exactly. I love, what was his name? He was the guy that said, there are the known knowns and the known knowns and the unknown knowns. And
Robert.
He was Secretary of Defense. He was
was it McNamara? I know he was in Bush's.
He was in Bush's. Great, and I quote him in one of my books. And unfortunately now I can't remember his name. But anyway,
Rumsfeld. Rumsfeld.
We were just doing some really cool stuff on. On looking at click through and multi-touch, and trying to combine that now with mass media and CTV and things that you have a little bit of a challenge measuring. One of the things in detail there is these unavailables. When you go into Google Analytics, you see unavailable where people have turned their cookies off. Now that is on a digital, on the internet. That's one thing that you can't quite measure, of course, directly. But you can certainly measure those things with reasonable certainty, using other methods. So some machine learning and artificial intelligence to get that down to a relatively small piece. I would say, from a percentage, you're probably in the low teens, maybe even less than 10, depending upon the company. Data. I always say there is no such thing as a free lunch on data. Data costs money. It's not just having Google Analytics or Adobe or some of the other ones, but it's about, then getting, further and further and further to dig deeper and deeper and deeper into those things. And, but, I'd say most of our clients are probably in the low teens, maybe less than 10%.
Okay. And let's say that clients don't hire you, or just say, like, what are marketers doing wrong with data today?
Oh, there's doing so much wrong there. It's painful to see. And the data is there. It's just, you see it. I think there's two things. And certainly the larger marketers, you look at a Geico spending $2 billion or more. It would be hard for me to
random stuff. Like, we're just, that's the campaign. It's just as random as we can go and mention Geico.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, yeah, or I could have picked on, I guess, Progressive, but spending so much money, and I would imagine that they're measuring everything. I don't know this, but I would imagine. But when I think about P&G and Unilever, I mean, they are really measuring so well. They have these global measurement networks, so they've got a global hookup into Nielsen and IRI and whoever it happens to be, and they can dial in from their desk here in Atlanta and see what's going on in Uzbekistan, for all I know, and then be able to do some really good analytics. When you get down to the mid-size, so this is kind of where we deal in the 10 million to 150 million. Things happen. They decide not to measure for whatever reason, and all of a sudden, their marketing mix and their campaigns are just out of whack. and they don't have things well coordinated. They think they might. The agency is maybe doing the analytics, and and as you know, I'm a fan of analytics. So analytics is better than no analytics, but having the fox guard the hen house, is not necessarily the right thing. But then when you get down a little bit further in the media budgets, then you're looking at where people are just using last touch attribution. They're looking at maybe some clicks coming to the website, and yet there are some better methods out there, even simple and relatively low cost methods to be able to do a better job. Now I'll have to tell you a story. I was doing a pitch over in Indonesia, of all places, and I was sitting there with the CMO of this airline, and he had his team, and we were in in his beautiful office, mahogany lined walls. He had this big nice screen behind him, and we're sitting there, and he kind of challenged me, and he says, "I don't think you can measure marketing effectiveness for an airline." And I I'm American, and over there that's Asian, different culture, and
Game
you're
on,
probably
bro.
what's that?
Game on, bro.
Yeah, exactly. Game on. And so I said, I'm just going to go for it. I'm either going to win this or lose it. So I pulled out my ugly wallet, and I kind of, purposefully like thumped it on the table. And I said to him, I will bet you my salary against your salary that I can measure everything that you do, with
Yes.
emphasis on everything. And he then, he like, went right back against the wall. And everybody, in the room went silent. You don't do that. He's like the guy, right?
Yeah.
And you're just not supposed to do that. And so I let him sit there, and he was totally silent. I let him sit there for about what I thought might have been 30 seconds. It might have only been 10. And so I let him sit there, and then I finally said, "But I didn't tell you how much it's going to cost. You give me, $100 million, you give me $1 billion, you give me the US national debt, and I guarantee you I can measure everything." So it doesn't really have to do, with being able to measure it. It has to do with being able to measure it at a reasonable cost. And I think what marketers don't realize is that that they do have to spend some money, but and that's then what they're doing wrong. There is some value in there. You can measure quite a bit, but you still have to spend some money to be able to gather the data and then measure.
I like the way that you sell a guy. You go for it, man. You just throw it on the table.
Well, I did get that deal, so that was pretty cool. It was fun. It was my first. It was my first over $100 million deal.
Oh, right on, man.
But there was in rupiah, which is not worth as much as as it is in the U.S.
100 million. Hey, man, that's all you got to say is your $100 million deal. Don't go into the details. So where's the delta based on like measuring, right? Is it the small company should be measuring? Is it, you work with companies 10 million plus? Like, can you give any indications on what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. You gotta measure. Our typical ROI is 100 to 1 to 1,000 to 1 in sales, and sometimes even 100 to 1 in incremental profit. If you're, let's say you're doing, you're only spending $1 million, and let's just say you take 1 or 2% of that, that's 10 or 20 grand. The ROI on that of just measuring, just starting to capture, build a dashboard, starting to look at some things visually, you will be able to really see what's going on. I was on a call this morning with one of our clients. I won't tell you who, but we had built them a dashboard, and they're in the process now of they had just finished their plan for the fall. They're going to start unrolling that here in September, and they're spending just a couple million. And they said, this data, just in a dashboard, no analytics whatsoever. It's just the data. And they go, wow, this is really good. We're able to do, a lot of regional stuff, and also do some national buys and what have you. And that for them, really, really, it was basically the CMO. And she said, this really, really makes a difference for us.
Did I hear you correctly? You said it was like 1 to 2% of the budget should be allocated to measuring.
Well, that's a reasonable number. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay, all right.
yeah,
Hey, that's a nugget. That's a takeaway here.
yeah. Well, yeah, I think that's reasonable. I mean, that's kind of,
Let's make it
for a
5.
larger.
Let's just raise your rates while we're right here, Guy.
Yeah, I wish I could. That's right. But,
So
yeah. So, but yeah, no, I think that's a reasonable number.
okay, all right. And then would that be included in somebody's marketing budget, right? Because depending on the life cycle of their business, one of the most common things is that people would say like, oh, you need to be spending 3 to 5% of your revenue on your marketing. If you're a company like Red Bull, granted it's like 50% and pharmaceuticals, so on and so
Yeah,
forth. You
yeah.
would say this would be a part of that percentage?
Yeah, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. So, so when you get a little larger, then you can really start doing some more sophisticated analytics for that 1 or 2%, and and then you can really start to see that it's not just a visual thing, and you might be able to do some simple correlations if you got a smart guy that knows how to do some spreadsheets to take all the data, start collecting it, putting it into something, and then just doing some simple kind of analysis on it. Maybe it's just a correlation as opposed to some real statistics, but nevertheless, for a smaller company that'll work. And then bigger companies, they're doing a lot more, the sophisticated analytics, and that's kind of what we do.
Okay. I love that because we charge for analytics, like when we do a marketing strategy, right? So that's like a piece of that strategy. So in there, and people are like, well, why would I pay for that? It's like, well, you want to measure everything that, you've done and what we're going to be doing. And if not, you shouldn't hire us if that's not important to you.
Yeah, right, right, right. I mean, and as much as you think, let's say CTV, connected TV is going to work, and all indications are that it works. But hey, we know from our other clients that print works, and everybody goes, print? What you talking about? Print? That doesn't work. And I bet you for every one of our clients, print magazines has worked better than most other investments. Go figure. And yet they would have canceled it and not done it. And yet that investment, dollar for dollar, so dollar invested for dollar in sales generated, works better than almost 90% of the rest of their budget.
It's funny, when we're pulling on clients, we're like, yeah, well, we're going to go ahead and cancel this, so we're going to start doing this digital thing. We're like, whoa, wait a second,
Yeah,
like, we don't know what that's doing. You don't know what that's doing. We like, yeah, just hold on, don't press the button yet.
That is so true. That is so true. That is so true.
So, what would you say? I wrote my question down. So, like, what is the most important thing when building a marketing strategy and then measuring its success?
Data, data, data. It's a 4-letter word for a reason. So we spend, it's actually kind of funny. I was talking to somebody this morning, and we probably spend 70 to 80% of our time capturing the data, vetting the data, validating the data, and making sure that we really have the right data set. Quite often on some of the things, you got to do some data transformation and massaging it. And then nowadays, I mean, analytics is definitely hard, but if you've got a good team, then the analytics itself is relatively straightforward. Now, that doesn't mean that it's easy or anything, but certainly from a project perspective, it's relatively straightforward. But now what we're finding is that once the analytics is done, it's the building of the insights and building of the recommendations that comes out of it. So it's not like, hey, we did this in analytics and this coefficient came out that said ABCD. It's now, well, wait a minute, it said ABCD, but you said that you have a highly considered product and you're in the furniture industry, and people just don't come to the website. They go to the website and they go other places, the competition, they visit the store, and then they make their buy. And it's then taking that ABC and turning it into a DEF that is, that really answers the question that they have and the insights that they need to be able to really generate a change in their business. And that's kind of where now that piece of it is getting, a lot larger in terms of what we deliver.
So like that, just the setup piece, like I don't know if it's a percentage of an engagement or whatnot, and just really figuring out like the problem you're going to solve, like how long and like what does that look like? To me, that seems like that could be monumental.
Well, and maybe let me answer the way I think you meant it. So it's kind of like, first of all, what is the scope? What is the real business question? And we focus, and to your point, we focus a lot of time on that. Quite often, hey, we just want to know how effective our media is. And okay, that's fine. So let's break it out by channel. What level of granularity you want. And then, let's start capturing data that is specific to be able to get us to that answer that you need. And then, then you go off and do the analytics. So, but in reality, the specification on the first round of project is, it's pretty certain. Let's just get, the core business question answered. Is my marketing effective? Which channel is better than another? Which campaign is better than another? And stuff like that. Then usually what comes out of that is that, they go, wow, this is really interesting. Look at that. We're making the best on this CTV, for example. Well, how can we collect more data to be able to get a better granular answer so that we can do even better on CTV? And, so then there's now a new round of data. There's another level of granularity. And then there's another level of consulting to be able to, to come up with, how to take those answers that you get out of the data and the analytics to apply them specifically to their question. So we're working with a client right now and in the insurance industry. And one of their questions was, we have 3 different types of creative. We have a brand, basically driving the brand, and no product whatsoever. We've got a kind of a category kind of a creative. So we're basically saying, well, in this category, here are a couple of features that are really important. And then we had a very product specific creative, which said, buy product ABC, and here are the kind of the benefits from that. And their question then was, which one is better? So if we spend 5 million on a brand, 5 million on a product, 5 million on a category feature, which one is better? And then what happens is that, there's certain regulations and what have you for them. And they wanted to be able to make sure that, if we're going to, follow the regulation at this level versus this level, because there's a cost involved, then, how, what's the loss in ROI if we go from a brand creative to a category creative to a product creative. And, fascinating kind of a business question, but that required us to, capture a whole bunch of new data, rework the existing data a little bit, and then do some analytics on it.
Yeah, so there's a ton of modeling, and then
Yeah.
How often are you dealing with like garbage data?
Oh yeah, so garbage in, garbage out.
Sure.
Yeah, it's and I hate to say it, a lot of the digital data is is confusing, to say the least.
Look at that. That's PC.
Yeah, that. So yeah, is confusing. We've been having a discussion here internally, and one of the things that comes out is really important is paid search. And but the real challenge with paid search is there's 3 ways that paid search gets measured. You have it either comes in as well, I take that back. Clicks that are not coming in from other sources. So you have direct clicks. People type into the address bar. They type in, company.com.
Yep.
And then that comes in Google Analytics as a direct. Then you have somebody types into the search bar, company.com, and that comes in as an organic search, not as a direct, even though they typed in the exact, company name.
Right.
And then you have, they type in company.com, and they either click on the sponsored ad or they click on the organic link. And so then now paid search all of a sudden says, hey, I generated that click. Well, that's garbage. That's absolute garbage, right?
Right.
The guy typed in company.com, the visitor typed in that. And so in reality, that person had brand awareness from somewhere else, right? It's from somewhere before that. They saw a TV ad, and then the ad at the end said, go to intel.com and find out more, right? So they type in intel.com in the search bar, and they see the first ad, and they click on the sponsored ad, and then all of a sudden paid search gets the credit for that. Well, that's wrong. That's absolutely wrong. It was the TV ad that did it. And so, for me, that breakout, is not necessarily garbage data, but certainly data that needs to really be understood. And and so we're actually working on optimizing that for one of our clients right now, and really looking in detail at
You put like an asterisk or something.
What's that?
You'd like use like an asterisk or something, because that's not easy to flush out, I'm assuming, without surveying, or do you just have something like formulaic to
Well, so we do some the last touch, which is kind of what that is.
right?
And then we're now digging in really deep on a multi-touch, going into Google Analytics and Google Data Studio, because they have some multi-path conversion. They're what's it called, the multi-path channel multi-channel funnel or something like that, MCF. And and so now you can see, well, I did a paid search ad. I'm sorry, I did a paid social ad, I did a paid social, and then I came in direct, or I did a paid social, and then paid search. And so then it's that sequence. Well, in reality, that sequence, it was started with a paid social ad. And so, the paid search just happened to get the credit for it. And, so looking at that, and then secondly, doing some what we call consumer pathways, which then also start from, analyzing using statistics, machine learning in reality. What did TV do, and did TV improve that paid search? Yes, it did. Did TV amplify the paid search, and did it amplify the paid search social? And yes, it did. And then making that connection and really looking at the whole pathway.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a ton of different ways, and maybe our audience doesn't know how to measure. Like, what are some of the trends that are happening now in like data measurement?
Yeah, well, certainly, the access to data is a big deal. I mean, it's incredible, the data you can get. The geo data, it's just awesome. You can do some really, really cool stuff by tying geo data to, like, let's say you have a restaurant, and really being able to see, hey, I did all these ads in that geo, and wow, look at that, my sales went up to that in that restaurant that was in the retail area of that geo. That's a big one. There's there's some really good data that'll actually tie maybe 40% of the visits to an email address. So I come in anonymously, and yet I can find out it's Guy Powell, at gmail.com, and it was actually Guy that actually visited it. So I come in anonymously, and they're able to then work back and actually tie it to your email, and not only your email, but also your physical address. And so there's some really, really cool stuff going on that way.
Is it like NSA, CIA? Like, who's powering that?
Yeah, no. The company is, I'll tell you the company name. It's Full Throttle, and they're really, really cool stuff. And then there's the geo, as I mentioned. There's some really cool search going on, search optimization techniques, content marketing techniques that not only improve the whole channel and how the channel does, but it also improves the way you can measure success, and then tying those things with machine learning or artificial intelligence to all of your other media that you're doing. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on there.
Well, yeah, it sounds like and I always look at the big brother angle, right? I mean, not that. Well, I mean, it's got to be there. In some respects, I mean, it's used and abused. Not that that's what we're going to talk about here. But what do you see as the restrictions that a lot of the hardware companies are putting, like Apple, right? They're crunching down on what type of data is shared. Do you see that as something that's going to inhibit, what you can measure?
Well, I've talked to a lot of people as I was doing interviews for my book. I've talked to a lot of people, senior marketers, and some of them are worried. Some of them said, absolutely, our marketing ROI is going to go down because of that. Other ones say, yeah, no problem at all. And what seems to be going on is you're going to be getting a lot of websites are going to start collecting first-party data. And then they're going to be selling that first-party data to aggregators. And that aggregation there of all that first-party data is then going to kind of replace the Google and the cookies, the cookies that Google is collecting. Now, in the Apple case, that's a little bit more of a challenge, but all this first-party data is going to potentially get past that. So instead of, taking your phone and knowing through the Apple ID, where you are and stuff like that, I'm gonna, for whatever reason, I've got Waze turned on, I've got this turned on, I've got that turned on, and then that's going to then know who I am, and then be able to kind of get past all of the Apple ID. That's kind of how I see it. Apple may work to kind of get past that, and try and negate that. Google might. I don't know. I mean, they put off the the cookieless future by, I guess, about a year or so, and because of, I think, some of the blowback and stuff like that. But yeah, I think there are going to be ways to get past it. And most of the marketers said, when I talked to them during these interviews, they said, yeah, it's definitely going to reduce our ROI, but we think there's reasonable ways past it. So get ready, I guess. Get ready. And actually, I was thinking. So I did this post-COVID marketing machine, interviews for that and writing the book. And I was thinking my next book is actually going to be, the marketing machine in a cookieless future, to actually capture and really understand what's going on there.
Got it. Yeah, Dave, you're big into not being tracked. I think you use DuckDuckGo. What are some of the other things that you're using to stay anonymous online?
I use Brave browser. I'm out of the Chrome ecosystem. So, but to your point, though, I was going to pop in and ask this anyways. It's not that I don't foresee a cookieless future affecting marketing ROI. It's just you're not going to know the exact identity of that person. You're still the marketing's still going to work on those people. They're still going to see it. They're still going to click on it. You're just, as a company, not going to know it's David McGraw that bought that.
Well, and there's a level of nuance there, and I could, because they are going to know, for a certain large percentage, they're going to know that it is Dave and it is Jon and it is Guy, and then there's going to be folks like you, Dave, and then you're going to have your cookies turned off, and they're going to say, well, we don't know that it's Dave, but we think it's somebody that looks like Dave. He's got a beard and he lives in in Oshkosh and whatever, and so then that's going to be good. But because I don't know it's you, then my marketing has to be a little bit more general. Whereas if I know it's Guy, then I can say, well, Guy just visited my site. He's been here before. He's he's a Gen X or he's a Gen Z, and he lives in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm going to target him with this specific message based on his behavior. Whereas for Dave, I'm going to say, well, we believe he lives in San Diego or wherever, and we believe he's got a beard, and therefore I'm going to have to give you a little bit more of a generic ad, and therefore that level of generics, I don't know what the genericity is enough to make that ad now a little less effective. And
so it removes the dynamism.
Yeah, right. And so then therefore I'm going to have a slightly less ROI because I don't know it's Dave, but I do know that it's Guy.
Which I like. I'm looking forward to the you don't know who I am future, because I'm even looking into a device called let me look it up. I still have it up here.
Rick?
No, it's a phone called the Librem 5, which is a Linux base, and it's not in any ecosystem. Because the thing that I hate about the phone now is that it will not operate unless you have a Gmail account or an Apple account. And so anything you do on it is going to be tied back to that.
Oh yeah.
I know. And they tie it back to your SIM card. So they've that's why, and I'll sound like the conspiracy theorist, but that's what two-factor authentication is just a re-updating of, okay, hey, Dave's on this phone number in this location, like, it just adds to that pile of data. And so I almost want to go back to a flip phone and then carry around a computer. And I'll use the computer when I want to browse the internet, and I'll use the flip phone when I want to call my mom.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I know I hate to say it, I'm on the other side, even though I do have some sentiment to what you're talking about. Personally, I like to see what marketers are actually doing. So I was talking to a friend of mine this morning, and he says, I've walked past stores, and then within a couple of hours or whatever, I'll actually get an ad for that store on my phone. And I like to see that, not because I want to be tracked like that, but because I like to, see how the marketers are using the data to, get better ROI out of their stuff. And one of the things one of my things my wife hates me doing is, when we're watching the Super Bowl, I'm taking notes on all the commercials, and then I'm making comments on it. Oh my God, that's a terrible commercial. It's got totally the wrong creative, the wrong audience, the wrong this and that, etc. And, and then she's going, guys, be quiet. I'm trying to watch the game.
So two things, Super Bowl commercials have been terrible for the last, 4 or 5 years. I mean, they used to be funny, and now they're all trying to do a message, and I'm trying to enjoy a football game. But the best instance of, that kind of dynamic marketing that I saw was my dad, who lives in Costa Rica, came to visit. And I've never once thought about taking a resort vacation to Costa Rica. I've never Googled it. I've never anything. But all of a sudden in my Facebook feed, I started getting ads for Costa Rican resorts. And my only guess is that he knew my dad was visiting, and we were probably talking about me coming to visit him one day.
Go marketing. Go marketing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only way I could connect. Why am I now getting this marketing?
Yep.
So that's crazy. Man.
So the answer is two things. One of them is never have any guests use your Wi-Fi from home. The other one is never ever let anybody use your phone or your laptop to do any browsing on the internet. All bad.
Yep.
Because us measurers and us marketing optimizers, we are out there and we're ready to to glean that information and make some money off of it.
I just picture your cookie history has exploded. You have a ton of email newsletters in your box. Is that the case?
It is, I'm sure. And I also know that there's a building in Beijing somewhere, and they've got all that cookie information, and they're just waiting to use it, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the Guy Powell standard.
So
what skills would you say, somebody that needs to be strong in measuring, right? Our audience is a bunch of agencies. What should they hire for? What should they look for?
Yeah, I did a poll on that and on LinkedIn, and I got some really interesting answers. And it wasn't quite the same, but it was pretty close. What are the skills that a data analyst needs? What I thought, so I had three options. I had Excel skills, I had data validation skills, and I had analytics, and then other. And I personally think that getting the data right is really important. And data validation and being able to look at data and making sure that it's right and vetting it and validating it. Because, to your point, garbage in, garbage out. If you got an error in the data, it's going to mess you up. And then the analytics is worthless. Now, certainly analytics is important, so you've got data analytics and then the interpretation. And, and so if you're, if you're going to bake a cake, you've got to, you got to look at all three layers. But nevertheless, it's, all three of those key things are pretty important.
Are you seeing an increase of SQL skills in the marketing sector? And are you familiar with SQL first?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Got to make sure.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. I appreciate it. So it's kind of hard to say.
For anything, anytime I do any analysis for our business, I pull the data out, and instead of putting it into a spreadsheet, I throw it into an actual database, and then I write scripts against that where I can rank certain attributes. Like if this data is above this, then I want to rank that a little higher, and I want to give that a little bit more weight. And I feel like I can create things that are way more valuable than you can do in a Google spreadsheet.
Well, now you're telling your age, so in putting it into SQL. But nothing wrong with SQL. No question you need it. But I think really what's going on is it's really spreadsheet skills, and then what's happening is then using Python to import it into Python and run your scripts. SQL using SQL scripts a lot less so. Not to say it's not important, but I would say at least where we are. SQL has gone way down in importance. You're using, Google Analytics or using Adobe, and you're pulling out some CSVs or whatever, and then you're sucking them into a Python script and then doing your analytics on that. And so I think the importance of SQL is probably waned a little bit.
A lot of the young marketers that I would say are data driven that I've met, they're studying like Python and
Yeah.
like Tableau,
Yeah.
right? So that marriage of like Python, I was like, really? And I mean, this, granted, I saw this happening maybe 4 or 5 years ago, but it seems that that is taking over a lot of where SQL was.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hate to say it, I'm a nerd, and I did self-teach myself.
It's like an AA meeting or something, Guy.
That's right. I'm on
You got a
stage
coin
3.
too.
I'm on stage 3.
Yeah.
And I will admit, I mean, Python, the power in Python is it's amazing. For somebody that grew up on I'm not going to even say, but for somebody that grew up on these very old scientific programming skills, Python is it's amazing. It's just amazing.
So, all right, Python, which to me seems kind of, it's also not a newer technology, right? I wouldn't necessarily go as far as to call it old. Where do you see, like machine learning and AI coming, right? Because that's just something that's perpetual and keeps growing, whether it's with your clients or in the market.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you know, it used to be SAS and SPSS as statistical tools. They're still used a bit. Nothing wrong with them to do some data cleansing and what have you. They're pretty powerful, but they've just fallen by the wayside, at least for us. And now it's Python. And then what happens is, because Python is so powerful, you can now automate a lot of different tasks that you otherwise had to either program or whatever. And because it's so powerful, now you build these scripts, and those scripts now have so much power in it, that the level of sophistication that you can build in. So nowadays you can, within one script, I can run 10 or 15 different machine learning methods on my data set to come up with an answer that's just a hair bit different, but nevertheless a hair bit better, but nevertheless better. And so I can I can really do some amazing things now with Python.
Right on. And then, like, insofar as just AI, are you guys building your own like AI in there where you're using your human inputs? Is there any platforms out there somebody can take on that's doing this?
Yeah, it's funny. Watson. There was an article on Watson, and I was I always thought of Watson, IBM Watson, being this really the cutting edge of AI, where you could kind of say, hey, here's a bunch of data, go out and find something in it.
Go beat Alex Trebek in Jeopardy.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Go beat, what is it, Ken Jennings in Jeopardy. That's right. But anyway, where they are now, and this article said that Watson isn't doing as well because they don't have the data. And the real challenge, and I'm going to be a little bit provocative here, artificial intelligence is not artificial intelligence, period. There is no intelligence in artificial intelligence other than what a human built into it. So it's basically automating what we kind of see in it. So in my mind, artificial intelligence means that it could see a piece of data and say, oh, I know what to do with that, and then answer a business question. Doesn't do that. You have to gather the data, you got to vet the data, you got to validate it, you got to get it into the system, you got to write a script, and then you got to do all this stuff and program it. So so that is not artificial intelligence. That's just programming. Right. Now, I will admit, when I think about Amazon and Alexa and Siri as well, they have been programmed to answer these questions, but it has been programmed. It is not artificially intelligent. One of the things that I can't do with my Alexa, for example, is I can't say, Alexa, reduce the temperature on the second floor by 1 degree and turn off fan. It'll do the 1 degree and
to 77.
It'll do the 1 degree and it'll turn off the fan, but it won't take that command, which is a simple command. If it was artificially intelligent, it would know how to do that, and it can't. So therefore, it is not artificially. It cannot think on its own on even a simple thing like that that a that a 2-year-old might be able to do.
Right. Yet,
Amen.
right? I mean, granted, it's down the road, but there's a ton of human input that goes into it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that all of that artificial kind of decisioning that might be taking place is really being done. It was programmed in by a human. It's not that the machine is taking over like in Terminator, where it's starting to, protect us from our own, from our own faults.
Right. Until they start writing their own rules, then they will never become intelligent. And all they can do is rely on patterns that have happened in the past and use that to model their next step. But if we invented a new word, right, the machines be like, that's not a word. Like, no, yeah, us humans, this is a new word. We're going to start using this word. And the machines are like, no, that's not a new word. And that they can't learn that. So.
Right. It was a little hard to hear you there, but I think, I agree with you.
I was trying to take him over there.
Yeah, it was, like if you, take an acronym, okay, maybe it'll figure it out, maybe not, but you have to program it first to say, I don't recognize that. I wonder if that's an acronym or something like that.
Right.
So like with this, right, all these inputs, measuring data, why hasn't somebody invented a system, right, where these things plug in, right? I mean, you have analytics that measures, but I haven't seen a real solid piece of software that measures a ton of data outside of spreadsheets, or maybe I don't know of it.
Well, and maybe we have to be careful on what we mean by data versus outside of spreadsheets. If there's data,
I mean, something just pulling everything in, right? Is there something, is there a tool out there that we might not know of that helps you with all this? Or do you continually have to go to all these disparate systems, model it and build it yourself?
Well, what like the P&Gs of the world are doing and the Unilevers is they have all these data sources. So Nielsen and IRI and Kantar and whatever it is that they're pulling their data from. And I don't know exactly, but those are the obvious ones. And so what they have done is they have automated the data capture. And, so in some respects, it's kind of like IoT, this data is coming and you're just capturing it. You may not be doing anything with it at the moment, but and then once you kind of start to have it, then you can maybe run some analytics on it. And in Nielsen and Unilever's case, for us, for marketing effectiveness, now that they have all the data, now it's just a question of using an intelligent interface to be able to pull the data that I want to be able to do the analytics on it.
Yeah, and I think that's what it is. It's not dumbed down enough, and I think there's a huge gap. There's a lot of white space that maybe somebody could develop a tool, because you have, of course, analytics, and you have all these places that are the data sources, and then you have tools like DataBox and some of the others that pull it together and make some dashboards. But as far as like really messing around and modeling and whatnot, I think that's a huge gap, which is why you're in a perfect space for your business. So that's a good positioning on your end.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
Along those lines, like what haven't we covered today that the world should know?
Yeah, good question. Let's see. I think just thinking about into the future. To your point, your last question there, I do believe that the world is moving that way. If you think about the interfaces into like Facebook Insights and Google Analytics and Adobe. We have kind of automated those interfaces so that we can easily get that, so that data capture piece is an effort and time and resources now significantly reduced. For larger analytics companies, they've been able to connect into more and more of those systems. And so then companies, you asked for one of them is Alteryx. They've got a really good piece of software to automate all of those data connectors, so that you now have kind of a reasonably intelligent way to connect into a lot of data in a good way. But there's still unfortunately tons of data that still needs to have a manual the manual building of that connection. And I think that part is going to get better and better. I think the analytics itself and the automation of the analytics, when I talked about those Python scripts, those Python scripts, we're obviously storing them away. Everybody else is storing them away and then reusing them and modifying them. And then what's going to happen, I can imagine, is they'll be put into software, and you'll have a nice user interface to be able to pick and choose the data you want, and then pick and choose the analytics you want, and pick and choose the outputs that you want.
Yep. No, I love that. And final question, how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm all over the place, but my company name is ProRelevant, and we are at prorelevant.com. And what that means is we want the brands to be more relevant to the consumer journey using analytics. Then you can find me at marketingmachine.marketing. You can find me at guypowell.com. So a couple of different places, but primarily here it's I would go to prorelevant.com.
And Marketing Machine reminds me of, I think the show was Sports Machine with Gene something, if I'm not, you guys remember that? Am I just imagining that with a lack of sleep? Never mind. All right, and then you got a book. Go ahead, you got to plug the book one more time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you very much. So post-COVID Marketing Machine, is about building a marketing machine so that your marketing can be more predictable, reliable, and accountable. And with that, we've been able to build machines where we're talking about, for our client size, we're talking about hundreds of millions to billions of dollars in incremental sales by really optimizing that whole process that marketing goes through. So it's not just it's not just the data, it's not just the technology, but it's the processes around that, it's the training of the people around that, so you can really use the most recent data to continuously improve what you're doing tomorrow. And now just looking at that in the post-COVID world.
All right, right on. I really appreciate your time today and being so willing to share with us.
Absolutely, John. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Good to meet you on the podcast, and definitely good to meet you, David, as well.
All right. Thanks, Guy. Take care now.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed our episode. Please subscribe and review wherever you can. And if you would like to join the Digital Mastermind, go ahead and shoot me an email at jon@digitalmastermind.com or visit us at digitalmastermind.com. We'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye now.